A lot of people who have perfectionistic patterns of behavior genuinely believe that they just have high standards. I know because I totally used to as well. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes it is just a case of having high standards. However, when you look more closely, what often shows up underneath that high standards label is intense stress, harsh self criticism, and a constant sense that you and your work aren't good enough. Perfectionism can show up in a number of ways. It can look like overworking or over-preparing or rewriting or redoing or reworking until you're completely exhausted. It can look like fixating on your flaws and dismissing your strengths and accomplishments. It can look like talking yourself out of opportunities altogether because you don't feel like you're qualified enough or good enough, even when you do have what it takes. It can also look like procrastinating on getting started or taking action. Hey there, my name is Amy Shield, and I am a life coach. I help smart, capable women feel as confident on the inside as they look on the outside. In today's video, you'll learn how to tell the difference between what's high standards and what is a perfectionistic pattern of behavior. You'll also learn what perfectionism is often trying to protect you from. Yes, perfectionism is usually a form of self-protection. And I'll also talk about a two-step approach to shifting away from perfectionism that includes self-regulation first and then self-confidence building. This approach is really designed to help you move forward without needing to get whatever you're working on perfect first. Let's talk about the difference between high standards and perfectionism. The quickest way to tell the difference between high standards and perfectionism is to look at what is driving the behavior. High standards are often rooted in an inner commitment to excellence that is also flexible enough to allow for errors and growth along the way. People with healthy high standards are able to separate themselves from their results. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is often rooted in an attempt to secure safety, especially in terms of what you'll decide that your results mean about you or what other people will think about you. People who have behavioral patterns rooted in perfectionism often struggle to separate themselves from their results, and they often end up tying their self-worth to their success or to the approval of others. Let's talk about what high standards and perfectionism both feel like. High standards often include some clarity around what excellence looks like for you. In other words, you can describe what you're aiming for and why it matters. High standards also often include an inner commitment to excellence and also to supporting yourself in pursuing and achieving it. You don't just demand quality from yourself, you work with yourself toward creating that quality. It also looks like forward movement with room for iteration. You can make progress without needing the first draft to be the final draft. Healthy high standards also typically include a level of self-confidence and resilience that supports course correction when it's needed. If you don't meet your own standards, you can cope effectively and adjust without collapsing into self-criticism. It's not about maturity. It's actually about adaptation. You've learned how to respond to imperfection and maybe even failure in a way that keeps you moving forward. High standards can absolutely be demanding, but they don't require you to be perfect in order to feel safe. Now that we've covered high standards, let's talk about what perfectionism tends to feel like. It often includes fear-based urgency. In other words, you feel a sense of risk or danger if you don't achieve or maintain perfection. It also often includes this element of what will they think or what will this mean about me? And that kind of shows up as a loop. Your work, your appearance, your choices, they all start to feel like a referendum on your self-worth that you are desperate to control. It can also look like having difficulty finishing things because you're constantly moving the goalposts on what you consider to be good enough or done. And in fact, it probably doesn't feel safe to let yourself be done and put your work out there. It can also show up as harsh self-criticism, fixating on your flaws and dismissing your strengths and your accomplishments because your flaws just feel bigger and more important than your strengths. Procrastination and overworking can both be forms of perfectionism. One of them looks like avoidance and the other looks like overfunctioning. They are both often driven by the same desire to mitigate risk, especially social risk, and secure safety. Whether you're overworking or procrastinating, perfectionistic behaviors tend to have the same underlying goal: to reduce your vulnerability by trying to control outcomes or perceptions or meaning, what something means about you. That's why perfectionism can show up in so many different forms. High standards are rooted in the self-confident pursuit of excellence. Perfectionism is rooted in trying to create safety and reduce vulnerability. Let's talk about what perfectionism is trying to protect you from. Perfectionism is rarely random, and it tends to be a protective response. It can be an attempt to protect you from things like judgment and criticism, or feelings like embarrassment or shame, or being seen by others as incompetent, or experiencing rejection or the loss of approval. It can try to protect you from uncertainty about how something will land or how it will be received, or the inability to control how others perceive you. Perfectionism can also be trying to protect you from something that's a little bit closer to home, and that's your own self-perception. Sometimes perfectionism is trying to prevent you from having to think a painful thought about yourself. For example, it might be thoughts like, if I can't fit into these jeans, then I'll believe that I'm unattractive and unworthy. Or I have to perform well in that meeting, or else I'll believe that I am not cut out for this. Or if I get criticized, it'll mean that I'm not good enough. A lot of this actually happens subconsciously, and so we don't even realize that it's happening, but it's absolutely influencing our confidence in the way we perceive ourselves. Now, perfectionism isn't just about avoiding what other people might think. It can also be about avoiding how you think and feel about yourself when you don't show up perfectly. Let's talk about some behaviors that people often don't recognize as perfectionistic behavior patterns. When many people think of perfectionism, they often think of someone who procrastinates or avoids starting. However, as I mentioned earlier, perfectionism can also look like someone who never stops. Here are a few common examples: overworking or overperfecting a work product, rewriting the same email, presentation, resume, or proposal repeatedly, or making one more tweak that turns into hours or days of extra work, or fixating on your flaws while dismissing your strengths and your wins. It can also look like avoiding applying, asking, or being visible because you're afraid it might not go well. You can also experience appearance perfectionism, such as feeling like you can't leave the house without makeup on. You might experience a lot of self-criticism that masquerades as self-motivation. Again, the details can change, but the driver is usually similar. If I can just get that perfect, then I can feel safe. Let's talk about why your nervous system matters here. Your brain prioritizes protection when your nervous system is dysregulated. That's when perfectionistic patterns often become more intense. Now, this doesn't mean that you're broken or there's something wrong with you. It just means that your system is responding as if something's unsafe. In that state, it becomes harder to access the thinking part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that can do things like reasoning, problem solving, thinking critically, and that long-term planning. This is why self-regulation has to come first. The goal of self-regulation isn't to erase your stress or discomfort, but to bring you back into a state where you can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting out of fear. Once your nervous system is better regulated and your thinking brain comes back online, then you're much better positioned to work toward building self-confidence. If you'd like to learn more about how your nervous system influences your ability to build self-confidence, I'll link to another video here on the screen and also down in the description for you to check out after you finish this one. Okay, let's talk about my two-pronged approach that shifts away from perfectionism and helps you start to build self-confidence in the long run. You can't think your way out of perfectionism while your nervous system still feels unsafe. And for that reason, my approach here has two parts. We begin with self-regulation. Self-regulation brings you back into what we call your window of tolerance so that you can think more clearly, something that can be a struggle when your nervous system is activated. It's the difference between trying to force yourself to stop being perfectionistic while your system is activated, in other words, while you're experiencing anxiety or feeling shut down, and leading yourself through that period of dysregulation so that you can respond thoughtfully. Self-regulating doesn't mean that you're not going to experience stress. But it does mean that you can lead yourself through that stress without letting it run the show and drive your decisions. The second part of this approach is all about building self-confidence. Once that thinking part of your brain is back online, you're much better positioned to do some self-confidence work. And that's why we start with self-regulation. Here's a core belief that can help loosen perfectionism over time. I can navigate whatever comes up, even if it's not perfect or exactly how I want it. Now, notice what this belief does for you. It doesn't promise that nobody will judge you or that you'll never feel discomfort or perfect outcomes. Instead, it builds belief in your capacity to handle whatever arises, and that is the definition of self-confidence. It helps you trust that even if something's imperfect or someone misunderstands you, or if someone gives you feedback that's hard to hear, or if you don't feel amazing about how something landed, that you can still lead yourself through it. This is where our friend resilient discomfort comes in and fits beautifully. Resilient discomfort is the willingness to face and move through emotional discomfort because you recognize that it's working for your greater good over time. Perfectionism tries to protect you from discomfort by attempting to control outcomes. Self-confidence grows when you learn that you can tolerate discomfort and move forward anyway. Here's a clear process that you can use to self-regulate and generate self-confidence when perfectionism shows up in your day-to-day life. Step 1 is to notice the perfectionism cue. It might be something like feeling the urge to fix or tweak something one more time and then doing that repeatedly, or struggling to hit send, or reworking the same piece multiple times, or feeling stressed about what someone might think about you or your work, or deciding that you can't move forward until it's perfect. Okay, so step 1, recognize the perfectionism cue. Step number 2, self-regulate first. If your nervous system feels dysregulated, in other words, you feel like you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, start with self-regulation. The goal here is to bring your nervous system back into your window of tolerance, a state where you can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting out of fear. If you'd like to learn more about nervous system regulation in general, I'll link another video somewhere on the screen and also down in the description for you to check out. Step number 3 is to identify the underlying fear. So once your nervous system is better regulated, ask yourself 3 questions. What am I afraid will happen if this isn't perfect? What am I afraid that will mean about me? And what am I trying to prevent? This is important because perfectionism often feels logical on the surface at first. Identifying that underlying fear helps you start exploring what's really going on underneath the surface and often subconsciously. Step 4, ask questions that help you build self-confidence. Address how you could lead yourself through that underlying fear. You might try questions like, if this doesn't go how I want, how can I support myself and navigate it? Or if this does go how I want, how can I navigate that without immediately raising the bar on myself again? Or what is the next self-trusting step I can take to move this forward, even if it isn't perfect? Or if someone criticizes me, how can I lead myself through that? These questions move you from how do I prevent discomfort to how do I move through discomfort when I encounter it? And that's the shift that helps you move beyond patterns of perfectionism and build self-confidence over time. Step number 5, define a self-respecting ship it standard. Perfectionism tends to keep moving the goalposts, and because of that, it can feel really hard to get anything to a point where it feels done. By contrast, high standards set a clear goal and support your ability to follow through on actually pursuing and achieving it. So ask yourself, what does excellence look like here realistically? And how can I define good and complete for this project or product or effort, whatever it is you're working on? And what would I feel proud to submit even if it wasn't perfect? The objective here is not to lower your standards. Instead, the objective is to choose standards that are rooted in self-confident excellence instead of fear. Step number 6, follow through and practice resilient discomfort. Next, take self-confident action. Let it ship when it's good enough. Hit send when you're pretty happy with it so that you don't overthink or over-edit. Release yourself from the expectation that you have to get it perfect and embrace getting it done and navigating whatever comes next. If discomfort comes up, you allow that resilient discomfort to exist without reaching for perfectionism as your escape hatch to try to get back to feeling safe. That's what builds self-confidence over time. These little batches of decisions where you decide that maybe good enough actually is good enough. Let's go through some examples to illustrate what this would actually look like in real life. Example number 1, maybe you're asked to give a presentation in a meeting at work. You care about doing a great job. That's not a problem. High standards might look like preparing thoughtfully, practicing, and refining your message. Perfectionism might show up as obsessing or over-preparing or reworking every slide repeatedly or feeling like it's never safe to be done. The fear underneath that might be, if I'm not perfect, they'll think I'm incompetent. Here's how the two-pronged approach can help in this kind of a scenario. Number 1, notice the cue. You're reworking that slide for the 4th time because you're afraid it isn't good enough. Number 2, self-regulate. Bring your system back into that window of tolerance so that your thinking brain comes back online. And you can do that through things like breathing exercises or taking a short walk. Again, like I said earlier, check the description for a link on nervous system regulation basics. Step number 3, identify the fear. I'm afraid they're going to judge me. Step 4, build self-confidence. I can navigate questions, feedback, and imperfection. Number 5, define your ship it standard. Clear slides, clear structure, and maybe 2 intentional refinements, then I will call it done. Step 6, follow through. Give the presentation, and then allow yourself to feel any discomfort that comes up without using it as a reason to try and over-control. Okay, let's get into some appearance perfectionism with example number 3. Maybe there are days you feel like you can't leave the house without makeup, or perhaps you believe that you can't run errands unless you feel put together. Maybe you avoid being seen because you're convinced that people will judge you for not looking your absolute best. Surprisingly, the fear here often isn't actually about makeup. Instead, it's usually around what you think it will mean about you if you're seen without makeup. It's often a fear around self-perception and perceived judgment from other people, especially if you're someone who tends to struggle with self-esteem or self-worth. Use self-regulation first to get that thinking brain back online. Then, choose a self-confident thought that you can move forward with. That might be something like, I can navigate whatever comes up, even if I don't look exactly how I want to, or it's possible for me to tolerate discomfort about being seen without makeup, or I don't need to earn safety by being perfectly presentable, or maybe it's something really simple to start with. Maybe it's okay for me to be seen without makeup on. Now, you don't have to start with the hardest version of this. If you struggle to leave the house without makeup and you want to change that, you can certainly start with just a small exposure, maybe running a quick errand or a walk outside or a brief stop somewhere without makeup. The idea here isn't to prove that you don't care, but to build self-trust that you can handle how you feel. A little personal story here and a full disclosure. For many years, I hated being seen without makeup by pretty much everybody outside of like my parents and my brothers, and it was exhausting. One day, I just decided to try going without makeup and letting lots of people that I knew see me. And guess what? Nobody said anything. And even if they had said something, I know now that I could have gotten through it. I realized that I had been spending so much time, money, and effort wearing makeup that most people didn't really even notice or care about to make myself feel better. It wasn't really that they weren't going to accept me. It was that I wasn't accepting me. Once I learned to accept and love how I look without makeup, it became so much easier and a lot less expensive and exhausting to get ready every day. All right, example number 3, applying for a new role. Maybe you see an opening for a position that you want, and immediately your brain starts listing off reasons that you shouldn't apply. I'm not qualified. I don't have enough experience. I'm not good enough. What if I apply and they reject me? Perfectionism here can look like overworking your resume or repeatedly reworking your cover letters or delaying submitting your package until the opportunity passes. It can also look like talking yourself out of applying entirely, which is something early on in my career that I actually did quite a lot. Again, employ self-regulation first, then build self-confidence. I can navigate rejection, feedback, learning on the job, or being new at something. The self-confident move here is not guaranteeing the outcome. It's taking the step and trusting that you can handle whatever comes up. High standards can be healthy and also motivating. They can reflect your values and your commitment to excellence. Perfectionism is different. It's often a protection strategy. It's basically an attempt to mitigate risk and secure safety, especially around what you'll make something mean about you and what you think other people will think about you or your work. You can control what you make things mean about you, and I suggest that you work to be intentional, compassionate, and self-supportive when it comes to that realm. However, you can't control what other people think about you, no matter how much your brain tries to tell you that one more tweak will help you achieve the perfection that your brain believes will insulate you from rejection, judgment, and failure. 3 things that are totally survivable and that you can learn to handle. You're allowed to show up imperfectly. It's okay and normal to fail. You are still seen and loved always. If you'd like to shift away from perfectionism, start with self-regulation so that your thinking brain can come back online. Then build self-confidence one small thought and action at a time. I can navigate whatever comes up, even if it isn't perfect or exactly how I wanted. That's how you pursue excellence without letting fear run the show. If you'd like some support with moving beyond perfectionism and building self-confidence and self-trust, schedule a free coaching consultation with me at amyshield.com/book. There's also a link to that in the description. We'll talk about what's happening for you now, where you'd like to be in the future, and how I can help you build the skills you need to get there. My name is Amy Shield. I am a life coach. I help smart, capable women feel as confident on the inside as they look on the outside. Thank you so much for checking out my video today. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.